Magneto has a legacy of his own. He is a formidable force, and everyone in the X-Men universe knows that, the fans and mutants alike. I mean, how many times has Magneto shown up as a villain yet again? Yep, way too many times. So when his daughter, Lorna Dane, was introduced, everyone knew that things were going to be a bit different now, because, certainly, Lorna would carry forward her father's legacy, right? Well, that is what we will find out in today's video. Can Polaris stand a chance against Magneto? Is she as big of a threat as her father, or is she far worse? If you are curious, then stick around, grab your snacks, and let's start with this breakdown to see who makes the most magnetic villain, the father or the daughter. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Magneto and Polaris. Who are they? Before we get down to business, let's have a quick look at the father-daughter duo. If you are new to the X-Men fandom, thanks to the X-Men 97 TV show, you definitely saw Magneto playing a key role throughout the episodes. But you might not know who this guy is. Well, let me tell you a bit about him. Max Eisenhardt never quite had a good life. It's apt to say that he was born in the middle of chaos, if you can venture a guess from his name. This poor boy was born right in the middle of World War II. The society around him crumbled into dust, and Max stood witness to the horrors of mankind and their hate. He watched as people around him, innocent and naive, were persecuted and killed for simply existing. And one day, this thing hit too close to home. His parents and sister were killed in front of his eyes. And even that was not the end of his troubled life. He was dragged to Auschwitz, and he lived in the concentration camp as a guinea pig for the Nazi oppressors. He was tortured and experimented upon. The only good thing in his bleak life was that in that camp, Max saw his childhood crush, Magda. They were each other's rock through the turmoil and each other's light at the end of the tunnel. When Max became an adult, he decided to push his fellow friends at the camp to start revolting against their tormentors. He urged and riled up his friends to start fighting for their freedom, and eventually it worked. Max and Magda escaped from the camp and fled to a small city. This was their new beginning. They got married, had a baby girl named Anya, and life was good. But things took a turn for the worse when one day, the house caught on fire. Anya was trapped inside the house, and Max, like the good father he is, wanted to go and save her. But the authorities interfered and prevented him from going in. And Max could do nothing but watch helplessly as the house burned down to the ground with his baby girl in it. This led to the awakening of his power, and Max, in his rage, used that power to lay waste to everyone around him. Magda, his last place of comfort, watched Max go completely berserk and fled away from him, fearing he was evil. Max was left all alone once more. He decided that he would start afresh again, and this is where he changed his name to Eric Magnus Lenscher, the name we know him by the most. He forged documents to get this identity and fled to Israel. Once there, he had a run-in with Charles Xavier. The young Professor X and Magneto became fast friends. They enjoyed their debate over the prospect of a superhuman race, more powerful than humans but not so easily recognized. Eventually, they revealed their superpowers to each other and worked together to get rid of a Nazi criminal. While doing that, Eric and Charles came to a crossroad. Charles wanted peace and equality for the mutants. He wanted both mutants and humans to have the same footing in society, a noble cause that Eric, unfortunately, did not agree with. Eric, who has seen the hatred that mankind is capable of, did not think it was even worth giving humans a chance. His opinions on mutant rights went vastly against Charles's, and they both decided to go their separate ways. Since then, Magneto and Charles have become each other's worst enemies. They both want what's best for the mutants, but their ways of achieving that simply go against the other's moral code, and their long, drawn-out feud begins. But still, it is clear that Magneto is a dear friend of Charles, and if there was anyone Charles could trust to leave his X-Men to, it was Magneto. Now, let's talk about Lorna, the mistress of magnetism. Did not start off knowing she was the daughter of Magneto, though. She had no idea. Lorna was conceived when her mother had an affair with Magneto. Since it was an affair, obviously, her mother did not tell her father about it. But her father was sure something was up. When Lorna was a young child, her father, who was a pilot, took her and her mother on a plane ride. On this plane ride, her father confronted her mother about the affair, and given they were mid-air, there was no way her mother could have walked out on the conversation. This understandably led to a huge argument between the parents, and Lorna, who was a young little lass, had no way of understanding what was happening. She knew her mommy and daddy were fighting, and she wanted them to stop. She tried to stop them in the only way she knew how, by crying out. But crying was not the only thing that Lorna did that day. Given the emotional stress of the situation, Lorna's powers were activated, and in its uncontrolled state, her magnetic power was strong enough to mess up the plane completely. The plane crashed, and only Lorna survived the disaster. Lorna's powers were more or less discreet, except for her flaming emerald locks. She was adopted by the Danes, who wanted Lorna to fit in, so they were forced to dye her hair a more acceptable color by their standards, and Lorna remained that way. She studied, and she was happy. Years later, one fine day, she was beckoned to San Francisco, thanks to a machine. Samuel Starr Saxon decided to create a robotic version of Magneto, and he asked his partner, Mesmero, to use his psyche generator to bring all mutants to San Francisco. When Lorna showed up there, Mesmero captured her. Mesmero put Lorna in this machine that could change her genetic structure and make her unleash all of her magnetic powers. Mesmero insisted that Lorna was Magneto's daughter, and thanks to his persuasive hypnotic abilities, Lorna soon believed it. Thus, Lorna was more than happy to side with the android Magneto and fight with the X-Men. Iceman, who was in San Francisco then, decided to use Lorna's adoption by the Danes to snap her out of the hypnosis, making her realize she should do what is right, and they soon saved the day together. But as it turns out, Magneto truly is her father. And not only that, but he has been aware of Lorna's existence for a while. While he did not know that the affair had led to this pregnancy, when Lorna used her powers and made the plane crash, Magneto sensed it. He showed up at the site, and once he realized Lorna was the culprit, and was no doubt his daughter, he decided that the best thing he could do for this daughter of his would be to keep her away from this world as a whole. So he let the Danes adopt her after Mastermind wiped Lorna's memories of her power. The entire story was revealed in the 243rd issue of X-Factor, and since then, their familial bond has been widely accepted by everyone. Over the years, the relationship between the two has grown quite a bit, just like their power. Talking about their power, let's analyze the powers of both characters. When it comes to the X-Men universe, there are so many varieties of powers and abilities, from being able to read minds to behaving in an animalistic fashion. All of these powers come from the X gene. That is why, in order to understand and explain the mutants better, there is a category that is followed to divide the mutants based on their powers. Yes, we are talking about the class system. We are Epsilon level mutants, who are at the lowest end of the power spectrum. These powers are usually useless in combat. They are usually quite unassuming powers, like the one that Arctic Maddox had. Next, we have Beta Mutant. We have quite a few of those. Though their powers do have some application, they are not that significant, just so you know. After that, we have Alpha Mutants. Most of the mutants we follow are Alpha Mutants. Their powers are vast, and they have a good control over them within reasonable limits, like Cyclops or Rogue, after she managed to learn how to control her powers well. Lastly, we have Omega Mutant, which are the strongest of the bunch. Alpha Mutants are scary enough, but Omega Mutants are a whole different breed. Their presence commands attention and fear. Now, the reason I explain this here is because this father-daughter duo does not fall in the same category when it comes to their power level. While Lorna is definitely a formidable force to go against, her mutant classification ranks her as an alpha mutant. Other than her magnetic manipulation, she also has another power, which we saw after Wanda Maximoff's M-Day. Polaris lost all of her powers and was sent to Mir Island to be under Moira's care when suddenly, out of nowhere, she ended up with super strength. This super strength came from her being a nexus of negative emotions. Whenever she had her superpower, it came at the cost of the mental well-being of everyone else around her. But despite having the two-hit combo of a primary and a secondary mutation, Lorna does not come remotely close to her father's prowess. Magneto, by the new Krakoan list, as we saw after the House of M, is now classified as an Omega-level mutant. While Lorna's powers have an upper threshold that we can measure to a degree, Magneto's powers are way too vast to measure. As we have seen time and time again, Magneto has pushed himself to the extreme to meet his goals, and this resilience is not just due to his mental fortitude. He has pushed himself in all senses of the word, and seeing him finally listed as an Omega-level mutant truly makes you wonder how dangerous he can be in the future story arcs of X-Men. Master of Magnetism. Despite their power level difference, Polaris is often called the Mistress of Magnetism, and it is not a title that is remotely unearned. She deserves that title, fair and square. While she has the ability to do everything that Magneto can do, she has so far only used her powers to manipulate gravitational, electrical, and magnetic fields. She also has the ability to summon the great amounts of energy that Magneto can. But we cannot be sure, as Lorna has always preferred not to use her powers in combat situations. But from whatever we have seen, Polaris can easily lift and manipulate metals to do her bidding. Her abilities are so fine-tuned that she can almost turn the solid chunk of metal into liquid and manipulate it to her will. Did you know that she once made her costume entirely from silverware and metallic plates around her? How cool is that? Polaris can do quite a few things with her powers. She can create a magnetic field to protect herself from any type of harm, and use the same field to lift people and objects in the air. She can also fly around by using the Earth's magnetic field to propel herself upward. We all know that concentrating always yields better results, and that is precisely the case when it comes to Polaris as well. When she concentrates, she is able to see the patterns of magnetic and electrical energy in the world around her. She can also see the natural magnetic aura that surrounds living beings. This comes especially handy when she is going against robotic doppelgangers, as these androids do not have the same magnetic aura. Polaris is also able to manipulate the magnetic energy and use it as a blast. She managed to destroy a Shi'ar starship using a single magnetic pulse, and I reckon back when she was a child, she did the same with her father's plane. As long as things are affected by electromagnetic fields, Polaris is able to control them, as she is very closely tied to the Earth's electromagnetic field and has her fair share of control over it. If Polaris wanted, she could easily overpower her enemies by borrowing the Earth's strength. And since she can absorb the Earth's energy, it comes as no surprise to anyone that she can absorb any other form of energy too. When Cyclops hit her with his eye beam, Polaris absorbed that, along with Havoc's energy beam and Storm's lightning, to propel an entire island into space. Speaking of Storm, it might seem like Storm and Polaris's powers are rather similar, especially when it comes to the manipulation of the electromagnetic spectrum bit, but it isn't. Storm can handle the powers of the spectrum, yes, but she cannot handle all of them. Polaris, on the other hand, can control, manipulate, and use all of the powers that make up the electromagnetic spectrum, which is why she is considered to be on Max's level. Remember that really cool scene in the X-Men movie where Mystique injected a security official with metal that Magneto then extracted using his powers? That is a scene that has stuck with me through all these years. And yes, Lorna can do it, too. She can control the iron present in blood with ease, making it super easy for her to make an entire crowd of people lose their consciousness. When it comes to Magneto, while at first he was thought to be an alpha mutant, his powers are far too great for that. He can control all forms of magnetism and use it to manipulate any type of metal. He can even hold the headless form of a celestial with his powers, which is definitely not an easy task to do. He can also manipulate the entire Earth's magnetic field to do whatever he wants. One time, he pulled back this humongous bullet that Kitty Pryde was trapped in, which was a couple of light years away from Earth. If I had to use a scale to compare Magneto's powers, I would say that his powers are almost comparable to those of the Phoenix. His control over magnetism is so huge that he can use that to change geography as we know it. We have seen Magneto literally move to the tectonic plates, changing the ocean floor, and change the route of a river, threatening to ruin the whole world with floods. His magnetic force fields are far stronger than Lorna's, as these fields can easily withstand a blow from Mjolnir, as well as the detonations of not one but multiple nuclear bombs at the same time. Other than these invisible force fields, Magneto is also able to create magnetic armor by manipulating whatever metal is around him, even if the core metal used is not invulnerable, like adamantium or vibranium. With so many layers of metal, his magnetic armor is very capable of withstanding blow after blow, like those exceptional metals. While his force field is a great defense that has saved Magneto from Phoenix's blasts, or Ghost Rider's hellfire, his offensive moves are just as cool. He can shoot powerful magnetic rays and electromagnetic pulses, which will quite definitely hurt his opponent. His attacks are strong enough to crack the Holocaust armor, so you can imagine just how powerful the blows are. The Magneto is also able to manipulate the magnetic field line and use magnetic power for flight. He can do it over an extended period of time, over great lengths, and at varying speeds, proving just how fine-tuned his powers are in comparison to Lorna. His X gene connects him to the Earth's electromagnetic field, and this link is so strong that even when Lilandra kindly neutralized Magneto's other powers, this ability of his stayed. His geomagnetic link is also the reason why sometimes Magneto can easily turn off gravity within a certain radius of himself. He does so by reversing the polarity of Earth's magnetic field, which I, for one, find jaw-dropping. Thanks to his powers, we all know that Magneto and metal go hand in hand, but just how finely can he use his power? Well, whenever Magneto wants, he can literally bond metallic substances to other elements on an atomic level, which is a whole different level of mastery of his power. As he can control even the tiniest amount of metal, Magneto can easily control the blood flow to one's brain, thanks to the 2.5 grams of iron present in human blood. That's literally the amount of metal present in a penny. And using just that, Magneto can affect someone's brain chemistry to a degree. That just gives the expression mind-boggling a whole new meaning, I guess. Perhaps this is why it came as no surprise that he could literally suction off the adamantium from Wolverine's skeleton. I mean, if it had to be someone, Magneto would have been the go-to guy. While Lorna is a strong contender when it comes to magnetism, she does not stand a chance against her father. He exceeds her with decades of experience, and thanks to that, Eric can literally generate light. Yep, Eric can go, let there be light, and there will be light. That is because he can control the electromagnetic spectrum far better than Lorna can. He can absorb and shoot electricity, and he can even open portals between two dimensions. We have literally seen him bend the light rays around him and render himself invisible in the 4th issue of Vision and the Scarlet Witch. Magneto the Lightbender. Kinda sounds cool, doesn't it? Magneto can also perform astral projection, and that's how he was able to interact with Professor X quite a few times. That must be a handy trick to have up your sleeve, right? Lastly, the biggest flex that Eric has over Lorna would be Eric's resistance to telepathic probing. He has trained himself for several years to render himself invincible against telepaths. Even when he is unconscious, he can fight off telepathic attacks, which is utterly amazing. We get to see that in Trial of Magneto, the 2nd issue, and boy, was that a ride. All of this, plus his genius intellect, strong will, and resilience, are what make Magneto, well, Magneto. Can she really beat Magneto? Finally, let's get down to business. In Magneto Dark Seduction, we see the father-daughter duo get together and start forming familial bonds. Magneto was seen accepting his daughter Lorna and taking her under his tutelage, helping her learn more about her power. However, despite his training and having his powers dampened, she does not stand a chance against him. In the 4th issue of Magneto Dark Seduction, we see Magneto literally whooping her ass in a fight, even when he is not as strong as he generally is. Isn't that proof enough that the old man is in an entirely different league? While they share the same genetics, the biggest reason why I personally think Polaris would never be able to defeat her father is because of her own mental issues. Polaris was shaken up by everything that happened to her, and she never wanted a hero's life. She joins the X-Men, stays around for a while, and leaves. She has done it over and over again, and that is because she simply does not want anything to do with this life. She wanted to be a geophysicist and focus on her studies, which is a great thing in itself, and I like that about her character a lot. But because she has been mentally unstable since her younger days, it really forced her to focus on her academics more. Apart from that, due to her general lack of wanting to be a part of the conflicts and tumults, Polaris does not have the power on quite the same level. I am not saying she cannot be powerful. The take-home message is that she does not want to be this powerful. Wanting is what drives a lot of people to be who they are, and for Lorna, it's her academic life. Magneto, on the other hand, wanted to be powerful. He wanted to be feared, respected, and treated in a godlike fashion, or at least that is how I interpret his character. I suppose somewhere, he felt like if he was all-powerful, no one would ever be able to hurt him again, or put him through the same miserable time that he went through as a young kid. And that is a very deep-seated desire. He pushed himself to his limits every time he had a chance, just to prove to himself that he could do it. And that is what made him Magneto, the force of nature that he is. Of course, his years of experience also played a significant role in that regard, but you get what I mean. Marvelous verdict. The Mistress of Magnetism has a long way to go to be like her father, just like the rest of us. I would joke and say that Magneto has dad strength, which only dads have. But really, his strength comes from his indomitable will, which only a few of us can boast of having. They really didn't know him, son, as David Goggins would put it, and he sure showed everyone who he truly is. Having him classified as an Omega-level mutant is just as satisfying as it is terrifying to watch. It would be interesting to see how Lorna Dane squares up in the future, because if she ever decides, I believe we would have quite a fearsome mutant in front of us. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.